Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most complex and often overlooked conflicts in recent history, the Yemen Civil War. Now, this isn't just about Yemen, it's a story that involves the entire Middle East, and even stretches into the halls of power around the world. It's a story of politics, religion, economics, and, unfortunately, a great deal of human suffering. But we're going to break it down together so that by the end of this video, you'll have a clearer picture of how and why this war started, and what's happening today. So let's get into it. To understand Yemen's civil war, we first need to look back. Yemen has always been a bit unique in the region, divided by its geography and politics. For most of its history, Yemen was actually two separate states, North Yemen and South Yemen. They unified in 1990 after the Cold War, but the transition wasn't smooth. This wasn't a natural, easy merger. They had deep-rooted cultural, political, and religious differences. Now, fast forward to 2011. The Arab Spring hits Yemen like a tidal wave. Massive protests erupt. People are frustrated with years of corruption, high unemployment, and poverty. President Ali Abdullah Saleh, who had ruled Yemen for over 30 years, is forced to step down. His deputy, Abdrabu Mansur Hadi, takes over, and that's where things start to spiral. Now, Hadi steps in with big promises to fix Yemen, but he faces enormous challenges, a worsening economy, high unemployment, and a lot of local divisions. In the north, there's a group called the Houthis. They belong to a branch of Islam, known as Zaydi Shia, and historically felt marginalized by the Yemeni government. The Houthis had been clashing with Saleh's government on and off since the 1990s. When Hadi takes power, the Houthis see an opportunity. They rally people who feel left out of Yemen's new government. And by 2014, they're a strong movement, powerful enough to start pushing south. The government is losing control, and it doesn't help that Hadi's leadership isn't resonating with Yemenis. So the Houthis start a full-on campaign to take over, and by early 2015, they capture the capital, Sana'a. Hadi is forced to flee to Saudi Arabia. Alright, here's where things get even more complicated. You might wonder, why would Saudi Arabia care so much about Yemen? Well, it's actually about more than just Yemen. See, Saudi Arabia is largely Sunni, and it's very suspicious of anything that seems like an expansion of Shia influence in the region, and they see the Houthis as being aligned with Iran, a major Shia power. Iran, on the other hand, sees supporting the Houthis as a way to expand its influence and to push back against Saudi Arabia. So, by supporting the Houthis, Iran can put pressure on Saudi Arabia right in its backyard. For Iran, this is an opportunity to counterbalance Saudi influence. For Saudi Arabia, it's a huge threat. In March 2015, Saudi Arabia, backed by a coalition that includes the UAE, launches Operation Decisive Storm. They start bombing Houthi positions across Yemen. The goal: to weaken the Houthis and reinstate Hadi's government. Saudi Arabia's thinking here is that a quick, decisive intervention will put Hadi back in power. But it doesn't go as planned. The war drags on. The Houthis are tougher than expected. They're deeply embedded in northern Yemen, and they have local support. Meanwhile, the Saudi-led coalition's airstrikes are causing a lot of civilian casualties, which leads to international outcry. The humanitarian situation gets worse and worse. By now, Yemen is not just facing war, it's facing famine and a healthcare crisis. Let's take a moment to talk about what this conflict has done to the people of Yemen. The UN has called it one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world. Millions of people are on the brink of starvation, with many more lacking basic health care, clean water, and sanitation. The bombings, the blockades, and the ground battles have devastated Yemen's infrastructure. Cholera outbreaks are common, and Yemen's children are growing up in one of the most dangerous places on earth. This isn't just a Yemen problem either. When people are starving, when diseases are spreading, it affects everyone, everywhere, and aid groups face huge challenges just getting basic supplies into Yemen. The coalition has imposed blockades, which they argue are necessary to stop weapons from getting to the Houthis. But it also means food, medicine, and other essentials struggle to reach the people who need them. So, who's involved in this conflict beyond Yemen? Let's talk about the main players. First, we have Saudi Arabia and its coalition partners, including the UAE. They have a strategic interest in keeping Yemen stable and under a government that won't align with Iran. The United States is also a key ally here, providing logistical support and arms to Saudi Arabia. Then, there's Iran. Officially, Iran denies giving significant support to the Houthis, but many experts believe they've provided weapons and training. This support is more about pressuring Saudi Arabia than any deep-rooted alliance with the Houthis. Finally, we have the UAE, which, interestingly, has its own agenda. The UAE has supported various local forces in southern Yemen, aiming to secure its interests around the port city of Aden and the strategically important island of Socotra. This has led to some friction between Saudi Arabia and the UAE because their goals in Yemen aren't always perfectly aligned. There have been multiple attempts to negotiate peace. The UN has been involved in trying to broker ceasefires and peace talks, and there's been some progress here and there. In 2018, there was a temporary ceasefire in the port city of Hodeidah, which allowed more humanitarian aid to reach people. But the ceasefires are often fragile and collapse quickly. Each time there's a push for peace, both sides come to the table with very different demands, and there's not a lot of trust on either side. For example, the Houthis want full recognition and a more significant role in government, but the Yemeni government and Saudi Arabia aren't ready to give that. And on the ground, each side's supporters are still fighting, which makes it very hard to reach a lasting peace. So, what's next for Yemen? Unfortunately, that's hard to predict. Some experts believe Yemen could eventually break apart into 2 or more states, returning to the North-South division. Others think a compromise government could be formed, but that would require a lot of trust building. Meanwhile, the humanitarian crisis is likely to get worse before it gets better. International aid is essential, but it's not a long-term solution. Yemen needs stability, a functioning economy, and inclusive governance. And the world can't afford to ignore Yemen. It's strategically important, and the human costs are too high. The Yemen Civil War is more than just a regional conflict. It's a microcosm of the struggles across the Middle East, religious divisions, power struggles, foreign interventions, and the toll of endless war on everyday people. It's a tragedy, but one that deserves our attention. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with others. And let's continue to stay informed and connected about what's happening in the world. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.